brilliant. It's really nice to hear that the Social Care Institute for Excellence has actually started in that small way, and it really shows that almost the powerless of the relationship in co-production has created this movement. And kind of leads me to a question that I had for you, Pete, about what have been the most influential changes in health and social care specifically that have progressed the co-production sort of movement, having a think about Sky from being what it was to the organisation that it is now, and the transition that's been happening over the years to really take co-production by a storm and make it that word that it is now.
I mean, I think co-production really builds on other ideas like participation and sort of engagement and empowerment and all these sorts of other advocacy, and self-advocacy. And I remember way back we had a big debate about what's advocacy mean, and everyone was very excited. Now everyone seems to knows what advocacy means. And I think co-production is a similar sort of buzzy word, and but I think it's a funny kind of combination of factors that have led to where we are at the moment. I think on the one hand, we've had austerity, we've had cuts in benefits, we've had cuts in services. Actually, people are getting a lot. It's a lot harder to live now, really, if you're using services. But the flip side to that is that there's been a growth in this idea of citizen participation, and that sort of ordinary people have a right to sort of be much more involved in defining the services that they use. So it's kind of like there's these two things going on that are sort of a bit contradictory in a way, I think. But I think that the movements of people have a lot to do with it. So I think, there wasn't really a strong disability movement or a strong mental health service user movement, or people who've used care services getting together, or older people getting together and kind of campaigning for improvement. I think that's had a big influence. But then there's been sort of legislative change as well. So I think there's been a few pieces of legislation, in every single bit of policy, there seems to be some reference to the idea that, services would be better if citizens were more fully involved. So I think the Care Act, mentioning co-production and defining co-production 2014 was important, although the definition wasn't very strong. But then other things like, I think, for a long time now, we've had mandatory, it would be called service user and carer involvement in the social work degree, so that sort of people who have had experience of social work services, they have to be involved in the teaching of the degree, the selection of people to go on, and the assessment, and that's really important. I mean, it varies from university to university, but I mean, I was just talking to somebody from Birmingham University where it seems pretty amazing, really. They've got a group of like 30 or 40 people. They're really well trained, they're really well paid, they're supported, and they have a huge impact on the social workers who are qualified social workers. And I think social work is really leading the way in terms of that kind of thing. And I think that other professions could really benefit from similar changes. There's sort of like, there is teaching on psychology, there is a little bit, but I think it's not so systematic, it's not so comprehensive. That's really important. And I mean, the mental health...
a similar group in Suffolk, University of Suffolk, the social work courses.
Yeah, I mean, there should be in every university, in every higher education institute that has does the degree, but it doesn't. I think some do a little bit. It's patchy, I think, but maybe Suffolk seems to be a hotbed of co-production to me. So there's probably good things going on there.
That's good to hear. Nat, do you have anything to address from what Peter's just said?
Yes, definitely, and it kind of reminds me the fact that we were first introduced to the concept of co-production in the 70s, and the sort of snail pace sort of evolution of how it's become part of a tool that we can use in society. And it kind of, when you're talking about the system, and how people as service users can get involved and have an input into how things are conceived, there's still a very massive problem within the system, and in particular certain benefits. So if we talk about mental health and people with disabilities, mental health disabilities and illnesses, and the way that certain benefits are designed and how they are administered to people, and the fact that there's sometimes the stereotyping, the language, the way that someone who sits in front of a computer who can say yes or no to a benefit has not involved appropriately the individual or the family of the individual to get to a place where that individual has the benefits they need and are appropriate. So my question would be, do you feel, as society is progressing with co-production being used as a tool, that things like governmental levels of where they decide on what a benefit is and how that should be distributed to the populace, do you feel that we should have co-production deeply embedded within the system further than we already are?
Yeah, like higher up.
Yeah.
Well, I can only say absolutely. Absolutely. I think. I think. And I think the other thing that's really given co-production a boost actually was strangely COVID, because I think all the sort of self-help and peer support and sort of mobilisation of communities, I think that really had an impact on local authorities particularly, and sort of like their thinking, wow, there are these people out there that can organise themselves and really do stuff. Maybe they can do some things better than we can do them. And I think that's given co-production a really big boost.